Hey everyone, this is Corey with Stafford CDC, and today let's take a look at the Tuya Knives NV2. Now this is, of course, the NV2, as I just said. That means there is an NV1, but I know nothing about it. It's because we're talking about this guy today. You have some codes on the blade. Looks like it says D4 here. Not sure exactly what that is. Some kind of logo in the middle. It's a W. It says DW4. Not sure what it means, but this is an S9DV, and you can see Tuya's logo right there. Some purple dark matter fat carbon, I believe is the proper name of this handle material. Inlays in here, gives it a little pop of color, which is nice if you like that kind of thing. Fat carbon is really not my jam, so it doesn't do anything for me personally, but I know a lot of people like to see that. They like the way the color hits the light and things like that, but for me, it just doesn't do anything. So we can pretend it's not there for the sake of the video, basically. Ergos are pretty good. They fit my hand pretty well. This is a little bit flared at the end for me, wearing a large size glove. Not that it's uncomfortable, but I can feel it on the bottom of my pinky, and another 1/4 inch of handle would have solved that problem for me. Speaking of that, the blade to handle ratio actually looks really good on this. So a 1/4 inch of handle wouldn't have bothered me at all. But nevertheless, they were able to squeeze a lot into this handle using that Wharncliffe blade. So yeah, I would have enjoyed a little bit more handle room. But it's okay. I can live with it. The knife deploys really nicely, and it's got a good detent. Thumb studs only. You have some jimping on the back that really doesn't do anything for you. It's not aggressive enough to really work, but it's there. People who really care about that, it is there. Kind of get the thumb studs as a pad for your thumb to land on. This is the 3rd video in a row I'm yawning. Jeez. Sorry. Anyway, your thumb lands right on those thumb studs. So, it's a nice pad to push against. But that jimping's really not doing a whole lot for you. The grind on this is a flat grind. It is pretty thin, but not crazy thin behind the edge, with a not super thin blade either. Not thick though, probably 0.12, 0.125. You have a small swedge here at the top, which helps this come to a fairly fine point, but certainly not a super thin point. Overall, this blade shape is very reminiscent of being a full Wharncliffe, but it does have a little bit of belly to it. There's just a slight curve, which makes me think, I guess, this is technically a sheep's foot knife. But you do still have that very purpose-built tip with that for fine detailed work. And the grind being about 70% of the way up the blade, maybe a little more, makes that this was a pretty decent cutter. As I said, the ergos are pretty good. So when you cut with this, it's not too uncomfortable to use in a long period of time. It doesn't drag too badly through material as well. You're only hitting a small portion of full thickness blade here, and that decreases as you get towards the tip. So you're never really working too much close to the heel of the blade here. So that's good to see. This is on bearings. See, the action is really nice. You can flick this, you can with your thumb, pointer finger, or whatever. Get down on the grind and flick from it. Detent's a little bit light to be flicking from all the way down here, if I'm being honest, but that's not what it's meant for. The thumb studs work absolutely great. Lockup is nice and solid. These are numbered. You can see this is number 64 in there, so I don't know how many they've made. It also brings into question that DW4 and why that's there. So definitely not a code of serial number, because you see that right there. So interesting, something I didn't notice prior to filming this. Pod clip is just a nice milled clip, super unobtrusive, feels fine in hand, and fine for getting in and out of the pocket. You can see the clearance there, not very much sticking out of the pocket at all. The lanyard thingy is whatever. I don't use lanyards, don't know anyone who uses lanyards, and I don't really think it's adding anything to the ergonomics here. So I could take it or leave it. I'd rather just have the whole handle rounded off here, rather than having the spacer stick out like that. I think it would look nicer, give you a little more room for inlays. That's just personal taste though. One of my biggest pet peeves about knives in general is, this knife is a huge proponent of this pet peeve of mine, which, can you see how much of the detent track is exposed? And just like that, the whole detent ball is exposed for a long period of time. Like, that's a long distance for that detent ball to be exposed like that. And that gives it a lot of opportunity for junk to get in there, for grit, dirt, debris, and that will just gum up your action, especially when working with bearings. Having something in the detent hole is one of the worst feelings and sounds and knives, and this just opens itself up to that opportunity, and there's just no reason for it. This thumb stud swings so high and away from that bolster that I guess they wanted to complete this look, but they could have rounded this bolster off up here and had the blade start a little higher, thrown a finger choil on here, and they could have had themselves a really nice looking design still, and they would have been able to hide that detent ball track. Or better yet, just make the tang larger and move the lock bar down a quarter inch, and then you can hide that detent ball track. You can position things differently, position it further back on the lock bar, increase the size of the lock bar, decrease the size of the inlay, probably would make machining even easier for this model, and then you wouldn't have that little issue. But if you're somewhere sandy or really dirty and you're using this constantly and you're closing it and putting it away, especially if you're putting it down on a very dirty surface, you may very well get junk into that detent hole, which would be no fun at all. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about picking up a Tuya NV2. And I guess I've shared everything I have to share about it. It's a fine knife. It's not my jam aesthetically. The inlays don't do anything for me, but this is all personal preference, of course. You might be looking at this knife saying that you absolutely love it, and it cuts well. It feels good in hand, so I can't give it anything negative in terms of its performance. Just in that detent issue there that I mentioned, just a personal pet peeve. You might never have an experience where that's a bad thing, but I hope you don't for that sake. And if you do pick one of these up and you did have any issues with that, definitely let them know. They made a second version, so they clearly are not opposed to making iterations that change things in the future. So if you have issues with that, let Tuya know, and maybe we'll see a different version down the line. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and with that, take care.